Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing something a little bit new. It's another series that I'm starting on my YouTube channel, which is showing my coloring pages and some tips on how to actually successfully complete them in the way that I have shown them in the pictures. And although this is a big freedom wool painting for you to really take the colors and go with your own instincts and color it however you'd like, I wanted just to give you some tips on my most popular one, starting with the poppies. And I'm going to be doing 7 more of these to complete the series of the color with wool. And I created these because I wanted you to be able to be successful with your first time doing a wool painting, and not only that, but have something really beautiful in the end to show that you can frame or give as a gift, and not just learn techniques and then not know what to do with it afterwards. So I hope you really enjoy this. This is taken from a live on Instagram that I did a little while back, but I think the information is really fabulous to share. Enjoy! Okay, so I'm going to start here. And as you can already see from some of the flowers I've already completed, I have both of my different reds that you are seeing in here. And also the highlights that you're seeing is actually this pink. And I use a pink instead of a white just because I feel like it's less harsh, because it is a tint. And so that's why the pink is in the kit as well. You don't have to use it. You can always just try it with a white. It's just a personal preference for me, which is why I like to use it. So I'm going to start with this guy here, and I'm going to start with my brighter red. And how I decide which red to use is really all about light. And if you've taken, some of you have taken my artistry and design course, which I run a couple times a year. Right now, obviously, because I'm ready to have a baby, I'm pausing that at the moment. But we talk all about composition and why certain colors go where. We talk about value and movement and how to create your own compositions. And so this will be kind of a review for you if you've taken that course with me before. But if you haven't, it's all about light, right? So we want to kind of think about where the light is kind of shining down and where some of those overlaps are going to be, that's going to be a little bit darker. So that's why we have the 2 different reds. On camera, they may not seem super different, but in person, they really, really are. And so when I take some of my red, you have a couple options. You can kind of like shape it in your hand first, kind of like this, which you've seen me do with petals before, or if you're doing any type of the other coloring pages, you might be doing this with the daisies, kind of shaping it in your hand before you place it. With the coloring pages, you don't have to do that, but I kind of like to have a little bit more control over where it's going. And so I'm going to start at the top here with this area, and I'm going to take my time. Take your time and do it. If I'm going too fast, you can always rewind and watch it later if that's what you'd like to do, but take your time and really try to stay right in those lines. It is a black line that you get, so you want to make sure you are just kind of covering that. And I very gently use my needle to sort of guide along that line. And I'm right-handed, obviously. If you're left-handed, this will be obviously the opposite for you. But I hold with my one hand, my left hand, and then I felt down with my right hand. And that just allows me to give a little bit more control over where the wool is going. And I like to kind of use my needle really gently. You kind of see me doing this action a little bit with the wool to sort of move it. You really want to be gentle with this though, because that's how you break needles. I just like to do that because I like to guide, especially with these coloring pages. I'm finding that's really what I'd like to do. And so I'm just moving it around this way, trying to keep it at the top end, because that is where the bright part of my poppy is going to be. I am going to cover these little suggestion lines in here. I just have them in there so you can see where it goes. You want to cover the rest of this with red. We work in layers from back to front with felting. And so it's not really like painting where you can kind of go in between, or like a pencil crayon where you can go in between this. You kind of have to go over it, and then you can decide if you want to kind of have just like a nice black circle in the middle like I have for these guys, which is exactly what I'm going to do, or if you want to kind of bring it up the way that I've drawn it out. So that's kind of your preference, but I will kind of be covering that. And I like to just go around the perimeter as well. Some of my students have asked me why I work with my needle on a 45, which you might be noticing me doing. And honestly, I come from a drawing background and it just feels more comfortable for me to do it this way. You can stab just up and down. That sounds so funny. You can't use your needle up and down like this. I just prefer to work on a 45. It also helps me just see better where the lines are, and I just feel like I have more control. So you can definitely try that, changing the angle of your needle. Just the one thing that you don't want to do that will break your needle, and I've broken many, is change the direction of your needle once you're already inside of the backing. So you want to just be consistent with what angle you're going to use and just stick with that the whole entire time that you are poking. And so now I'm going to take some of my crimson, same kind of idea, okay? You don't need a lot. It actually will surprise you the amount that you really need to fill this in. You'll have lots of wool left over with all of the kits, which is really awesome. So you can actually add more to this if you would like to, or you can leave it as is. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to kind of fill in this area here. So we're really working on blending these two reds together because the light obviously is not going to reach inside the flower the same way it's going to reach that petal on the outside. And so I've kind of also overlapped, hopefully you can see that, I've also overlapped the work I've kind of already done with my new color. And that's just because it's going to help me blend in there, so there's not kind of like a harsh line that we're going to see as I'm felting this down. And I find this just so relaxing to do because you're literally just filling in space. There's nothing really to think about in terms of placement, in terms of, you know, guessing what color a poppy is, right? You know it's going to be this red color because that's the palette we have. Obviously there's other colored poppies, but this is kind of creating a gradient that we have going on here. And I actually like to do the center of my flowers last. Some of my students I've seen, they like to do the center of their flowers as they go. Really a preference for you. Try both. I encourage you to do both. You don't have to do exactly what I do. That's just my preference because it's sitting on top of, so I always kind of find it easier to do that. With flowers that are kind of like this guy down here, where there's kind of a petal that's sort of protruding out and coming out at us, kind of like this guy is doing the same thing. I will fill in the black first before I put this last petal on, just because it's overlapping, if that makes sense. So I always want in felting, just like painting, to think about the order. So I'm thinking about, okay, what comes first? Okay, that background, and then we're moving into the next piece, into the next piece, into the next piece, until we are whatever is closest to us. And so that is exactly how I work with this. Now what I'm going to do now is actually very gently pull my backing like this. You can see that's all coming through the back. I like to do this very frequently and very gently. You may see some felters online just kind of wait till the end and do that very satisfying pull. I do not do that. And the reason I don't do that is because it will actually distort your backing, like your felt. And yes, this felt is pretty strong. It's a really good quality felt, 100% wool, but especially if you're going to frame this, you don't want to like be rough with it, or even being gentle like that, but doing the whole composition at the end is going to just cause some distortion in your felt. So that's why I like to do it as I go. So that's just another little tip there for you. So I'm happy with this guy. I actually put in my highlight color at the very end. So I'm going to wait till I'm done my flower to do that. And so I'm going to continue on with this next petal here. And so just like we talked about, like this brighter red being at the top, we're going to continue having a brighter red right at the top here, coming into a darker red as that petal goes into the center of the flower and as it comes down at the bottom of the flower, right? Wherever that light is not going to get as much of, that is where you're going to have a different red, obviously. Okay, and so I'm just gonna take my wool and continue in this way. Now, you may ask yourself, if you've never done this before, how much wool do I use per section, right? Like this might be too much. Maybe look at that and go, oh my gosh, I have to felt all that down. That might be too much wool. You can always kind of like take some away, okay? I don't recommend you kind of do that. You can just sit there and just felt it in, okay? But my general recommendation is to start with less. And then you can always add and build more on top. It's way easier to add than it is to take away. You will rip your backing, your felt, if you try to take away something that's already been felted down. Like if I try to take this off, it's going to leave a hole and distort my backing, which we don't want. So you can always add more. So start with less. That is always my recommendation. Just like if you're shading in drawing, you always want to start with a lighter hand, and then you can always add more as you go. And so I'm gonna just continue in here. Now, another tip that I have that I really love for working with similar hues, so these two reds, right, to divide your petal space is actually to felt in where the petals meet a little bit more than you would felt the center of the flower. And that's actually what gives these kind of suggestion lines here that you're seeing, is I'm felting down on that line a little bit more than I am in the center of the petal. And that's just going to create a little bit more interest for you, a little bit more divide. You're going to see some more folds. So you're getting just more dimension in there, which is great. And you want to go slowly so you can really see the folds of the flowers, see where you want to felt in more or less. I'm going to pull my backing up. And also when you pull up off of the backing, your sponge, you're able to actually see better where you need to felt down more. And so I do it very, very often. Probably every like 20 to 30 pokes, I actually really prefer to pull up my work so I can see. And I'm constantly taking breaks and sort of like taking a step back and just looking at it, seeing what is working and where it's maybe not working as well, where I need to add some more wool to. Now I've done this whole petal in my bright ladybug red. So I can now go over top, okay, a little bit of a different technique than this first one where I sort of had this divide line and then added, right? This one I've done a whole entire petal in one color, and then I'm coming just right on top. Okay, so if you take too much wool, which I did purposely for that petal, just to show you this, then you can always add more on top. So now I'm gonna just go in right at the bottom of this petal with my crimson, darker red hue here, and you get the same effect. So don't stress if you feel like you take too much wool and now you've done the whole petal or the whole area in one color, because you can always layer on top. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm focusing just on this perimeter area, poking it the most, because that's where I have my petal divide. And again, that's how I've gotten these little petal divides that you see there. Now I'm going to come over to the right side now, because I need to put in my black center before I do this front petal, because it's curling towards us. So again, same idea as we have on the left side. This right side is going to have a brighter red. Just going to take that and kind of work around this little guy here. And don't worry if you overlap something. You can always go back. Okay, you can always go back and do it. I've been creating these literally just sitting on my couch watching TV, because I've been home and I've been really just enjoying the process of just filling in these designs. It's really relaxing. Just like coloring for people is really relaxing, right? You're just shading in those lines. This is exactly the same idea. And who doesn't need some relaxation at the end of the day? I know that I definitely do. Okay, I'm pulling that up. Again, just taking some of that crimson color, and we're just gonna go back in there. You can always take some more, and literally this is how much I'm taking right at a time, and that's barely any, right? And again, you're gonna have so much left over, so you can use it for other kits, other coloring pages. I like to just provide more than you even need, because you might want to add something to it, and I want to give you that freedom to do that, and I think that that's part of the fun. Or you can just have it for other creations that you want to make. Here we go. So again, I'm going to come in to where these petals meet, and I'm going to just felt down that perimeter really, really, really well. And this is where that 45-degree angle really comes in handy, because I'm not just stabbing on top this way, I'm coming in from this angle, really getting that perimeter. The other reason that I like to do it this way is personally, again, a personal preference, I like my flowers, especially poppies, to kind of have a puff to them. And so if I come in on, you know, vertically up and down this way, I'm actually felting down all of that puffiness that I've created with the wool, or where the wool naturally sits. So by coming in on this lovely 45, just on this perimeter area, I'm actually leaving the middle pretty much alone for the most part, or just felting it down way less. And so that's just really gonna give that nice little poof that you see. So if you like that a look, then that's how I get that, and keep it, I should say. I'm gonna take some black now, and you really don't need a lot of this. And I like to shape it in my hand first. You've seen me do this on Instagram a lot. I roll it in my hand like so until I get a shape. So if you want something that's a lot more round like this guy here, then you can roll it that way. I want something a little bit more oval shaped, so kind of this nice flat area, because it's gonna kind of sit in here, right? And so I want it to sit in there. Again, grab less than you think maybe that you need, but if you grab too much, that's okay. The more you felt down in one space, the more knotted your fibers are going to get, which means the smaller it's going to become. So again, do not stress about taking too much. You can always felt that down. And again, I'm on that 45, just stabbing away. Stabbing away. And I'm going to talk about some of the other coloring pages at the end of the live, especially the ones that have a background in them. A lot of you have purchased those, which is amazing. And so I have some tips just to share with you about going about doing the background with this foreground that you're seeing here. So if you've bought one of those, or you're thinking about buying one of those, especially the sheep one, I wasn't sure if that one was gonna go, and that's been one of the most popular ones. So I'm really happy you love that design. But I'm gonna talk a little bit about just kind of the sky and another blending technique that you can use at the end of the live. So we're just coming in to this final petal here. We have our divide, we have some nice gradient happening, and hopefully that's showing up on camera. I never know if it's showing up as well as it is in person, but I'm going to start at the top here with, again, lighter color, my lighter red, and I'm going to kind of, I like to sort of guide with my left hand and sort of sweep. I kind of like to mold a little bit where it's going before I felt it down. And this just takes practice. Like if you're doing this and you're like, mine is not working out like that, it honestly just takes practice. It takes practice. I've been doing it a while. So that's why. It just takes a little bit of practice and some patience and going slow. So now I have kind of this sweeping effect that's here, which is nice because it's making it feel like that middle part is behind, right? And I'm going to continue now down with my crimson color down this petal. And I kind of also, like, we have little stragglers. I kind of gather that with my needle as well. But I'm always kind of coming into my felt or stabbing at the same angle, right? So that, again, just takes practice. If you break your needle, don't worry. That's why there's two. I've broken many needles. It's not a big deal. You can recover those needles. And so if you're noticing, like I have here, where you have some spaces, that's just where you can come back in with some more wool. It doesn't have to be a lot, right? And you can just make sure you're covering those black lines. The other thing I love about this idea of the coloring pages for felting that I'm doing right now is that when you're done, unlike a coloring book that you just close and kind of put it away, this you can frame. You can frame, you can give it as a gift, you can keep it in your home and as an art piece, right? You're creating a piece of art, which I think is just so wonderful. So it's not kind of just wasted where you just have this book of coloring pages and then what do you do with that at the end? I know for me, I just toss it. I don't know what else to do with it, right? Fun while it lasted, but then what? And so I like the idea of creating a piece of art. And then I love giving them away as gifts. I love framing them. You can get some awesome frames on Amazon. Some of you have been asking if I will custom frame your work the way I custom frame mine. I'm currently not doing that. It actually takes a really long time to do. And it's a labor of love for sure. But I am actively looking for some really, really beautiful frames to put on the website in case you are really wanting to frame your work, but you're just not sure, like on Amazon, if it's good or not. Sometimes those things are really hard to tell if they're great, and I like to test things out before I recommend them to make sure they actually are good. I don't want to sell something or recommend something that is crappy, obviously. So here we have our poppy. Now, the other thing that I'm going to say is something that I did not do here that I'm going to now kind of re-show. So I did this on purpose so that way you can really see this and how it's going to make a really big difference. So this petal that's in this very front area here is coming towards us this way. And I did not felt it that way. I continued to felt horizontal. And one of my rules for people when they're shading or they're using wool, obviously, is that you're going to felt in the direction that things are going. So if you're doing a sky, for example, you're not going to lay your wool going vertically, right? You're going to lay that going horizontally. The sky is horizontal. Your clouds are horizontal, right? They're taking up that space. Just like that, in this case, this petal is coming towards us, but I went the opposite way. And so that really changes how it looks. And so how to change that, okay, if you do this, I like to start right in that center. Felt that piece down, so I kind of have this dangly piece, okay? And then I come and I sort of try and loop it around and felt it down this way. So now we're going vertically, okay? This is just something that is very subtle, but can make a really big difference in the dimension of your work, okay? And that's something that can take practice, that you'll have to practice if it's something you want to do, okay? You don't have to do that, but it is something that I do in my work to just showcase the direction. Same with this guy here. And if you do lay your red down going horizontal, when you add your highlight with the pink, we can always make that vertical, and so it won't be as noticeable, okay? So don't worry too much about that, which is what we're going to do now, which is exciting. So I'm gonna take literally this much pink. It's like barely anything. I don't even know if you can see that. Maybe if I hold it on the black, you can kind of see that. Okay, it's barely anything at all. You'll get lots more pink than this, but it's barely anything. And because you really don't need a lot. And I'm going to just start working from this center and kind of just letting it come up and pull. I like to just let this really do its own thing. I don't like to control it, and that's a hard thing for people with wool painting, is they want to control exactly where it goes, especially if you come from painting, you come from drawing. That's a really big part of just that letting go process. Okay, it will work out, I promise. I know that's a hard thing to hear, but it really will. You have to just let it, sometimes the fibers just go, and see how it goes. That's why we start with such a small amount. And as you can see, you really don't need a lot. Okay, I couldn't replicate this even if I tried. And I think that that's part of the beauty of it. But I always like to give it a starting point. So I'm starting from that center, and then I just let it wisp out and just meet it at the bottom. I'm not coming in and kind of striping it. Like, this is not felted down. You can kind of see that. I just let it breathe in the center and leave it alone. And I meet it on either sides. And I felt that down really well at the bottom because that light is not hitting the bottom. So that's kind of how it's looking. I'm going to do the same thing, just kind of coming out in here a little bit. Again, really wispy. And this part takes some practice, takes some trial and error. You may not like it at first. You may have to kind of gently coax it out and try again. Or you may decide that you don't even want to use the pink. That's totally up to you. But I like to put it in there. That's the beauty with these coloring pages too, I think, is you can make them as advanced or as beginner as you want. You can add as much to them or as little as you want. And again, there's so much that's offered in the palettes that you're able to customize as you see fit. So wherever you are in your journey, I know I have some people who they've been felting a really long time, and so they want something a little more challenging. They love the pattern, so this is definitely for you then, adding these highlights. That's going to be a really great challenge for you. And then I know I have some people who are complete beginners who have barely felted before or never before, and so this might feel more of a challenge for you. So, I mean, do with it as you will. Try it out. Measure with your heart. That's what I always say. I'm going to add this little white highlight in there. This is also optional. I just find that I always see this in poppies in my mom's garden when she has them. I like to roll this where the light is just hitting the center. This is an over exaggeration of it, but I think it looks really beautiful. So I like to add it in my poppies, and I just like to hit that top section there of the center of the neck. And if you're felting it down so much that you can't really see it anymore, that's a good indicator you need to pull up your backing, and then you can see where it's sitting, which is really nice. And there we go. So I do have some areas in here that I do need to kind of go back to because you can kind of see the line, but you can always go back in with that at a later time. I'm going to do the stem now, and I purposely picked this flower and did this one first because it's overlapping. So I'm going to show you a couple things you can do if that's you. Generally speaking, you can, do the background areas first and then work to the front. But if you don't, then that's okay. I use shadow green for the stems of my poppies. I really love this shade of green for that. I just find it just is really rich and goes really beautifully with the burgundy and the red. But you can choose whatever green you want. You do not have to follow what I've done here. You can choose a completely different green, but that's the green that I have chosen for my stems. And I just take a piece and I just roll it kind of like Play-Doh in my hand until it's a nice long line, because that's the shape that we're going in. And so again, I'm going to just kind of place it with my left hand, and I've left kind of this overlap. And the reason is because I really want to make sure I get it right at the base of the poppy. So there's no space in between. It really looks like and feels like the stem is coming from the poppy. So you have a couple options when it comes to running into another area like we are right now, okay? Option one is to just felt it in 2 parts, okay? And that's what I will recommend to you, especially if you are a beginner and this is something you're running into often because you weren't sure what to do first. I kind of just like to pull it up again so I'm getting right in where the next flower starts, so there's no space, and then I can just continue on. You can cut this or rip this, or you can just continue to felt it in. And again, I come in on this 45 and focus on the perimeter, so I'm getting these nice crispy lines, okay? A stem for me is sturdy, it's strong, it's holding this flower up, and so that's how I like to depict them. If your stem is looking kind of fuzzy, sort of like if I were to leave that like this, then that to me just tells me that you need to felt more in the perimeter there, okay? So if you don't want to rip it or cut it, then you can just keep going back and forth like this, ensuring that you have successfully covered all those spots.